All right, everybody, welcome to the Music Production Podcast. This is Brian Funk, aka AfroDJMac, and I'm very excited about today's episode. I'm here talking with Charlie McCarron from the Composer Quest fame, the podcast. One of my favorite podcasts, I must say. It's I found it super inspiring and lots of great techniques and ideas to try out. There's always a challenge at the end, and it's been a great inspiration even for starting this show for me. And I'm really happy to have Charlie here. So welcome, Charlie.
Hey Brian, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for
Appreciate the kind
thanks for
words
being
about my
here.
show. So,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, I love it. It's right up my alley. Talking about doing music, creativity, a lot of philosophy behind it,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
have a
And
very
that mostly came from my guests. The philosophy part anyways.
but you have a lot of fun things about the show too that I always appreciated. The chain question and the
Yeah.
theme songs.
Yeah, the chain questions my friend thought of that in episode 100. At the end of the episode he's like, "Well, what if I ask a question for the next guest?"
Hmm.
And ever since then we had 66 episodes after that, and uh, had this interesting chain of questions that I never knew where it was going to go. But, it's always interesting because it's kind of like whatever that guest would ask as a question, I knew that was on their mind. So then
Right.
that gave us an opportunity to talk about, like, well, what are you really curious about as a songwriter?
Yeah, and you often
So,
would turn that around on the guest,
hmm,
which is a
yeah,
great tactic. I love that.
yeah.
Now, when they would ask the question, were you aware of who the next person was going to be that would get the question?
Sometimes, yeah. There's a few funny moments that happened where it was like, I would mention the next guest, and somehow this person knew them. Like for
Mm.
example, I was like, "Well, the next guest is going to be uh, someone who does slot machine composing," and then the guy I was interviewing actually was like, "Well, did they live in New York?" I was like, "Yeah." Oh, well, that's my buddy who I used to live with. So
That's so funny.
who knew? Yeah,
That's a specific type of composing I never really thought about too much.
yeah, yeah. Those guys who do the slot machine composing, High Five Games. I got to visit them when I was out in New York,
Uh huh.
and they work in the 60th floor, I think, of the World Trade Center,
Wow.
just like making slot machine music. So,
Wow. Who would
yeah.
guess? And yet they can't have slot machines in New York because you can't have
Oh,
casinos.
oh, huh.
Yeah, it's
That's right.
funny.
You're a New York guy, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm on Long Island. I guess, about an hour east of the city.
Okay, cool.
Comfortably distant, where it's still kind of it's not the hustle and bustle of New York, but it's still close enough where if you want to get a taste of that, it's a train ride away.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that distance. One of my favorite parts about the city is coming home from the city.
Well, if I had known, I would have stopped by and said hi on my tour.
Yeah, that would have been
But
great. The tour that was a pretty cool way to go out. You really went out with a bang on Composer
yeah,
Quest.
yeah. Well, I kind of knew. So yeah, the for people who don't know the podcast, I ended it um, this past year, and but I knew I wanted to like end it on a bang, and so I kickstarted a big tour around the country and to Australia and Taiwan and Japan, and made 12 giant episodes, one in each location. And so my New York episode was like, uh, I only spent because of my travel plans. I wasn't very smart about it because I forgot to factor in driving time.
Hmm.
So
In New York.
my New York episode was like 4 hours, and I got 4 interviews in that time, just taking the subway around, and yeah,
Well, that's
a
good.
little
You don't want to be
crazy.
driving through New York anyway.
No, Oof.
You would have been lucky to get one done.
Yeah.
Did you have
So,
were these
well,
all
I've really
places?
enjoyed listening to your podcast though so far.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. It's been a bit of an adventure. I'm having a lot of fun, and this I can see already. The last episode I spoke with Ben Burns, and now speaking to you, and already it's a really cool way to connect with people, and just to have like a focused conversation, without like the cell phones going off, and and all the distractions you get all the time when you speak with people.
Yeah.
It's quality time, right?
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
21st century.
Yeah. Well, and I learned like pretty early on in doing my show that it's like even some of my best friends who I interviewed for my podcast, some of those questions I had never asked them,
Right.
like some deep questions about music and about life and stuff. And it just took like sitting down for an hour and just, yeah, no distractions.
Yeah, because how often do you really get to do that? It's kind of rare. And I look forward to that actually myself too. I've got, a bunch of my friends in mind that I'd really like to just talk to. And
Yeah.
instead of like, maybe you're hanging out, you're doing something and, um, you know, but it's kind of like when you are, maybe when you're younger, you have like a sleepover or you're on a road trip or something and you get that kind of just straight open time.
Yeah.
So, of all the places you went, were these new places for you, or had you been there before?
Uh, I had been most of the places in the U.S.,
Hmm.
but Australia or in Taiwan or Japan, I'd never been. So I was always obsessed with Australia as a kid because of the animals.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and I was hoping to see, a kangaroo, but I only saw a dead one on the road. So,
Oh, really?
but musically, it was really fun staying with some of my listeners out there, and
I find Australia
yeah,
to be a pretty
I
hoppin' place. No, not to make a kangaroo joke or anything, but I get a lot of response from Australia. There's a lot of action going on there.
cool. Yeah, it seems like the EDM scene and
Hmm.
like electronic music in general maybe it's kind of big there. I don't. Is
Yeah.
it? Uh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a very
Uh,
interesting way to see the planet, to do the podcast, and you get to really kind of dip your feet into the culture that's going on in those places.
yeah. It's I and especially like putting those episodes together. It was interesting like staying with a few different families in these places because you get a good uh view on like I stayed in rural Tasmania with the family there,
Nice.
just kind of off in the middle of nowhere kind of. Um but yeah, and then I got to talk with an Aboriginal guy in Australia too, and he like kind of filled me in on what music means to their culture
Yeah.
and like how it's so tied into their beliefs on like their ancestors being like a significant part of their own life, like even their dead ancestors and stuff. Um, so yeah,
Right. I think I was
and then
kind of brushing up on my composer quest, to get ready for this. And I think you mentioned, I don't know if it was the last episode, which I'm in the middle of the very final episode right now. Um, but
oh
it might have been
yeah,
one of the other ones I forget. But you mentioned something about how the whole idea of like recorded music is pretty new, and maybe like what would we say, like about 100 years or so, even less probably. But most of that is just tradition passed from person to person, and it's a
yeah,
very momentary thing, and like it's happening now and it's gonna be over and gone.
yeah, yeah. I can't remember who was I talking to that. said that. Mm.
I I'd have to double
Ah.
check for you. I've been kind of dipping into a bunch of those lately, um, but it was just kind of something I guess we take for granted because now music is so accessible to us. It's in our phones, it's in our pockets, and all of it, like the entire collection of human music, pretty much is in your pocket at any given time, ready to be streamed. And
Yeah.
there was a time not so long ago, and for most of our existence, that you needed to be there and you needed to be playing it and you needed to be listening to musicians.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah, I've been
imagine.
kind of thinking about that lately in that like I don't know about you, but sometimes I just don't listen to music for large swaths of time.
Hmm.
Like maybe I'm just getting too far into it like as my semi career, you know.
Right.
Uh and I just would rather listen to podcasts or something.
Hmm.
Um but then like when I do listen now, it's like I just went on another trip and I was on a long bus ride and um, listened to the new Radiohead album on repeat and the new Bon Iver album on repeat. And it was like such a great experience to like just listen to music over and over again.
And in that case, you're very focused in that you're kind of not doing anything else. You're just sitting there listening to it as opposed to, cleaning the house or taking a ride or it's in the back of a party or something.
Yeah,
That's always an interesting uh, way to do it. I always get the most out of it that way.
yeah. I was just talking with a friend about this and it's like she was talking about how she uses music constantly and it's kind of like an addiction to her to just like have
Mm.
it on in the background. And I was like, I can't remember the last time I just had music playing just as like a backgroundy thing.
That
Aside from like when I'm going on a walk maybe, but
Yeah, it's kind of interesting way to frame it, like an addiction, because if it's a drug, you build like a tolerance to it where it almost doesn't even affect you anymore.
yeah.
And when it's always going, it's just kind of there. You're in the shopping mall and the grocery store, and everywhere you go, there's just kind of this like hum of music behind you.
Yeah.
And it could very well be some deep emotional song with some, you know, powerful message, but it doesn't even touch you.
Yeah. And I told my friend like maybe you should try abstaining from music for a while and then it'll have more of an impact on you cuz
Yeah,
I
maybe. I mean,
I
that definitely
remember
happens with certain artists for me, where I need to take a little break, and then when I come back to them, you
yeah.
reappreciate them.
Yeah. Actually, so I lived in Tanzania for a while and I was like not listening to any American music,
Hmm.
or Western music, I guess I should say, because when I finally like put on headphones and listened to "Let It Be" by the Beatles, it was like the most amazing listening experience maybe ever that I've had, at least like of recorded music, because it just felt like something so new and fresh to me. Yeah.
I've gotten that experience from the Beatles a number of times in my life. I go through phases with them all the time, where it's like almost all I ever want to listen to, and then
Mm-hmm.
you take your break, and then a while later you come back to it and you're just like, God, they were so good. These songs are great. The melodies are amazing.
Yeah.
They've repeatedly blown my mind numerous times.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, I teach high school English, right? And I'm always around the kids, and so many of them walk around with just like one earbud in one ear. That's just like I almost think it's as much a
Oh.
fashion statement as, actually listening to music. But there's that just kind of like I guess, dull humming away going on in their heads all the time. And I wonder,
Oh,
what that does for their sort of appreciation for it and the
yeah.
understanding of like where it comes from.
Yeah. And one earbud would drive me nuts.
Yeah, just half the mix, right? Especially if you listen to the Beatles, right? Because
Yeah.
there's no drums on this side.
Yeah.
Why is there only vocals over here? Yeah, I think back to when I started in music, and that was really, when I started playing an instrument, guitar. I was 14, and I really hadn't been around too many people playing music in front of me. Um, so
Huh.
almost all my music experience was recorded music. Maybe like a concert here or there, but like never just somebody that I knew picked up a guitar or was playing on the piano or something like that. And I just wonder if
So,
that's like something that's slipping away from us a little on some level. Even the producers and musicians sometimes these days aren't playing instruments.
yeah. Yeah, well, that's usually me. uh but yeah, I actually have been inspired like recently to actually play again cuz my I've never been the best practicer.
Yeah.
Um but my friend invited me over to jam and I was like, "Oh, it's been a while." So we started getting into like playing funk music and trading off. We all play um, piano, guitar, bass.
Hmm.
But he also got a drum set recently, and I've never really played drums before. But it's it's so fun, just like trying to come
Yeah.
up with rhythms and I don't know. So I've rededicated myself to trying to learn drums,
Oh, that's
if
great.
if nothing else, to like help me be a little better as a electronic producer.
How cool is that? Yeah, I've had I wouldn't really call myself a drummer, but since I started playing in bands, the practice space was kind of always at my house. And looking back on it now, especially, I think how amazing my parents were for allowing that to happen, to just have in
Yeah,
the basement this constant rumble
yeah,
all the time of just us playing music, and probably a lot of it not so pleasing to their ears. But there was always a drum kit, so I would get to just play on the drums, and eventually learn how to at least keep a beat. I played in a little. We had a band at one point where we didn't have a drummer. We had two guitarists, songwriters, and our friend playing bass, and we needed drums. We wanted to do kind of like a surf rock band, early 60s rock band kind of deal. And so we just switched off on the drums. And playing the drums there's such a great physical release to it. It's hitting things.
yeah,
And, like, I'm kind of like you, I guess, a lot in that so much has been, electronic lately and computerized that whenever I get the chance to actually physically play instruments, it's always like kind of a surprise at how much of a release that is.
yeah, yeah.
The drums are
Well, and
perfect for that.
I noticed like playing drums versus any other instrument I played, I felt way more free to look at the other person I was jamming with, and it was
Hmm.
such a more like communicating experience. I felt
Oh, that's
like
interesting.
I'm not looking at my fingers to like figure out a cool guitar solo to do or something like
Right,
that.
because the drum is like in this big area.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's easy to hit it without looking. That's interesting. When I've played with people where sometimes, you're always kind of looking at each other, maybe smiling. I have this thing, usually when the music starts sounding good, it kind of makes me laugh. It tickles me in a funny way. So a lot of the people I gel with the best when I play, we're kind of like smiling and laughing at each other, because we like it. It's just like cool that it's working.
yeah,
And then sometimes you play with people and they're really in their own zone, and I think it does affect the chemistry a little bit when you can't sort of just like overall that sound, at least get like a visual like confirmation that they're digging it too.
Yeah. And I feel like in the past when I've been in bands and stuff, I probably am that guy that's just like in his own zone,
Uh-huh.
quietly not moving, looking down at his fingers. So that's good.
Yeah, different styles of
Hmm.
playing, I guess.
The other thing I've noticed, like we've been trying to learn a few funk songs,
Hmm.
and looking at or watching drummers do covers on YouTube is so cool because like unlike a guitar or piano, like it's really hard to tell what notes they're playing.
Right.
But the drums, you can see like, oh, at this moment he's hitting a hi hat. The hi hat's raised a little bit. You know, you can track that whole thing. Um, so it's really fun to try and like learn these and then hopefully apply them to my productions too later and figure out like when is a good beat to use
Yeah.
this ride cymbal or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny because you just listen and you know what it's doing. Where, the guitar, there's so many places to put your fingers, and that's it's much more challenging to figure out a guitar song or a piano song, for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. So that's a new adventure for you. Are you guys gonna try to play out at all, or is it more like a just for fun thing at this point?
Yeah, eventually I think we'll try and play out. Uh, we both just want to get better. We both don't work during the day, so
Hmm.
we're just gonna try and like build up our skills, meet once a week, and um, yeah, we've only done it twice so far, but
All right, cool.
yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, myself, I've recently just it was just last weekend where I managed to get together with two of my friends in two separate occasions to just play guitar in the same day, and it was just great. Just playing. We were just playing covers. We listened to music like, oh, let's play that song, and it was just working with another person, and it's been a little while since I've done that, and it's always a great joy. You can get
Yeah.
so solitary sometimes producing music, recording by yourself.
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
something I loved about what you were doing on the show and those on those tours for the final season. Just the way you would bring people on and start playing music with them.
Yeah.
Got
That was one of my like personal quests on the doing this tour was like I was feeling a little bit uninspired with my music making just because I was like so isolated in my room the whole time.
mhm.
So I was like, well, I'm going to go on tour. I'm going to be interviewing all these people. Why don't I just try and make music with them on the spot and see how it goes? So there were at least like 10 or so people that I wrote songs with, in about maybe an hour or less. And, we were in different locations. A couple of them were outside, which was so fun. And one of the songs ended up being about like these ground squirrels that we saw on the hill. Uh, and so, these songs were not anything to write home about necessarily, but just getting out and like making music with someone else without having like preconceived notions of where the song's going to go
Yeah,
was just so refreshing.
you can let that random squirrel just give you something to work off of.
Yeah. And
Would
it
you?
turned into a nice like 60s folk sort of protest song or
Oh
like
yeah,
peace song or something like
nice.
that.
Were you working with anybody that you had a bit of like an actual language barrier with, but then you can play music with them? Did you have any of that
uh
go on?
that would have been cool. But not really.
Not really. Yeah. Okay. There's been a
um
handful of times where I've found myself in those situations, and it was pretty cool, because again now like really the like kind of looking at each other thing came into play, and just kind of the a head nod or a smile.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I
Wh-
always thought of when you're playing with people, it's a language, it's a communication, and it's one of those that's just kind of like in your gut, not so much, intellectual
Yeah.
like words
Who were
are.
you playing with?
Oh, just like friends of friends sometimes. And it might even just be like maybe they didn't speak English that well, or even
Sure.
sometimes like, you just don't know them yet. And this is the first interaction you've had.
Yeah.
I can, one of the first times I remember doing this was in the Animal Kingdom in Disney World.
What?
Yeah, and it's weird. But like when you go to the Animal Kingdom in Disney World, they've got like, little areas. I guess there's like different types of I think anyway, this is how I remember it in my head, where it was like kind of like, well, these are like maybe like from the African continent, and this is more like South America, and whatever kind of animals are there. But they would have just like groups of guys playing music, and sometimes it was just a whole bunch of drums and percussion, and there were all these
Cool.
guys playing. I don't even know, just like all these African drums I'd never seen before. I was a kid, I was probably like 16 or 17. Music was playing with people is still pretty new, but it was a lot of fun to just like kind of they had extra drums for people to just bang on, but to get in there and actually play with them. And they'd be like, all right, this guy's like, he plays a little music. He knows what he's doing a little, instead of just someone that, just hits the thing to make a noise.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a cool it was one of the first times where I had that feeling like, wow, this is like beyond words, this is beyond anything else, that you're just having this conversation with people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like they were doing scripted music or anything, it was all like just kind of for feel. So you could feel like the songs changing, and if you call them songs, but it was a very cool experience
Yeah.
for, a young lad just
Yeah.
discovering all this stuff.
Yeah. Drum circles are pretty interesting
Yeah.
because, like, we would have some of those in college, and there'd be like 20 or more people, and a lot of them wouldn't say, like, even that they were musicians. Uh,
Uh-huh.
but just because of the, like, it's like something in our animal nature, I think, like, where we just entrain to the beat
Yeah,
and,
I
like,
totally agree.
yeah.
My friend Chris and I recorded a bunch of songs for kids with like learning disabilities that have trouble with social skills. So we we did a couple like live shows. So we went, and it was literally karaoke. Like we had a screen, and it would put the lyrics, and we would just sing along with our backing tracks. But my friend Chris would like organize a drum circle at the end. And it was really pretty cool how like the kids just took to it. Like they just knew it. They just knew how to be in a drum circle. He would give very like loose directions, like, all right, we're gonna get quiet now. And then everyone would like kind of look at each other and smile and get quiet. You know, there was just a great
Cool.
communication, innate communication, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, I was looking on your page. I wanted to ask you about this train jam that you were
Oh,
on. This
yeah.
sounds like a really cool adventure. Can you tell us about that a little
Uh,
bit?
yeah. It was so fun. The train jam is a train ride from Chicago to San Francisco, and the entire train was filled with game developers. So, video game developers, um, artists, musicians,
Hmm.
yeah, coders. And the goal of a game jam is to make a video game within like a small time frame. And so the on the train there were like 70 or more, maybe 80 games being made, and people just it was all people who maybe probably didn't know each other, uh, teamed up. And my friend Whit Trabella had gotten me involved in it, and I was writing music for 5 different games and doing art for one of the games. So, it was just
Wow.
like an insane 52 hours, uh,
Is
and
that
just
straight?
so
52 hours straight?
well, no, I went to sleep, uh, in the train car,
But was that the entirety
chairs.
of the trip though? It wasn't like a stop
Yep,
or anything. Wow.
yep, no, 52 hours.
5 songs you said and also some artwork.
Yep.
Wow. That is cool.
Yeah, I there's just like no other experience I've done that's been so much like so many creative minds in one place all working kind of on the same things.
Yeah.
And you just walk down the aisle and you see people working on their laptops, and you can just like obviously go up to them and say, "Hey, what's this project you're working on?" And they're happy to say hi. And so I did it mostly as like a networking thing, like to get to meet a few more game developers, hopefully get a few more game composing gigs. Um, so I went into it thinking that, but at the same time, it was like such a cool creative experience.
I th-
So, and then it culminates in going to the game developer conference out in San Francisco, um,
okay.
which is, yeah, just this
There's a
huge,
nice
huge
destination.
thing. Yeah,
Oh, that's really cool. And there must be such a energy there, openness and when you're walking down the aisle like you said and you just see everyone doing something and people are happy to share. That's got to be a really nice environment to create in.
yeah, yeah.
I imagine
It's,
with that many people, it's very easy to find somebody, with similar styles or something. You have something that you can offer them, and vice versa.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And, that week of the train jam thing and GDC, it was probably like the most meeting of people I've done in that short amount of time
Yeah.
in my entire life. I came back with a business card stack that's probably like 3 inches tall, and I don't know. Yeah, lots of cool people out there. So
Yeah, that's cool. And I see on your site it says we can play all those games too.
yep, yeah,
That's really
yeah.
cool.
So I guess I should plug. Um, I ended up. I was like, hey, all you composers, let's get all our music in one place. So I ended up like putting them all into Bandcamp albums,
Hmm.
so you can hear what people did. Uh, if you go to trainjam.bandcamp.com, and there were, I don't know, over 50 tracks between all of us. So I just made like 5 albums, um, based on different thematic content. So
Uh-huh.
like a chip tune album, and like a dance music album, a chilled out album, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's very nice. That's cool that you compiled that too. People to have.
Yeah,
I'll definitely put a link to that up for people to check out. Very
yeah,
nice to see it's just that happened in the span of 2 days. All that came together.
yeah. And people from all over the world too. It's like
Uh huh.
I met people from Brazil and um, like Europe and all over the place.
That's nice. So they get together just for the train ride, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
great.
and GDC, but
Yeah, but I guess they're
yeah,
deciding to start in Chicago, right?
yeah, yeah,
Very nice. There's such a cool community, when you dig into it, of people that are looking to just create together and learn from each other.
yeah. Have you done any game music?
I haven't really done any game music. I've done music I thought was going to be for a game a couple times,
Oh,
but then that never really materialized. Um,
sure.
but I think that's something I would have a lot of fun with
Yeah,
because I find myself more and more sort of needing some sort of, I guess, frame for what I'm doing. or direction, target to shoot at.
Yeah.
Where, because I guess, in the last few years where most of my music making is by myself, there's kind of an anything goes, flair happening where you can do whatever you want today. And sometimes when you have no focus, I find myself anyway, where I kind of just make these random things and they don't have any direction. There's nowhere to take it. But having something to use as I guess, like a guidepost or a roadmap or something, I find I'm so much better at creating things that way when there's sort of like a purpose and a place I'm trying to get rather than I'm just gonna see where I go.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's why I've been like a lot more drawn to film scoring and game scoring lately.
Uh huh.
It's just because I feel like I like helping other people with their projects too.
Yeah.
And uh you know, I do like doing projects on my own too and being my own boss, I guess, but it is kind of nice like as a freelancer anyways having like some direction and someone else counting on you. So,
Yeah. It forces you to stick to it, I guess, also, because when maybe I might have an idea, I want to make a song, kind of like some song I heard or some band that I'm into. Um, there's no necessarily anyway. There's no like reason to finish, and that's
yeah.
that can be an issue. You sort of need like someone saying, "So where's that track that I need?"
yeah.
I find myself more and more using visuals. Whether it's sometimes it's even just like something playing, some clips from movies or just whatever I can find that just looks cool, or paintings, pictures, and there's if you're familiar with Isotonic Studios, they do
No. No.
Isotonic Studios. It's a company that does a lot of Max for Live stuff that you use
Oh,
inside of
cool.
Ableton Live, and they've got this whole set of devices called the World Collection, which are really cool. It basically makes generative video for reactive video to your music, and you can kind of put like
Oh,
these different
sweet.
modules on each track, and they all kind of move in their own way, and it's just it's great if you're going to play live and you want some visuals, but I kind of like to just have it going on a monitor and it's just sort of this like thing happening, and sometimes it starts looking like these weird worlds and alien landscapes,
Ooh,
and I find that just kind of pulls me in a little more sometimes.
cool. So that's kind of interesting because it sounds like the music it affects the art, and then
Yeah.
in turn the art is affecting you doing the music again. Or
Yeah, it's like this weird like kind of circle of life thing happening where the music is creating the visuals, and then the visuals reacts to it, and then you're kind of like see it yourself, and then it makes you think of other things to do with the music, almost like because it's going to fill out that part of the visual.
yeah. Well,
S-
that is interesting actually because um I told you already this, but this new electronic music project I'm working on, I kind of did some art that was thematically kind of connected to it. Like I did a digital painting sort of thing. And then after doing the painting, I started thinking about like, ooh, how could this relate to the rest of the electronic project?
mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's the Helium Requiem, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed that. You got Salvador Dali's stuff. I actually have a print of a Dali painting in the studio. It's actually I just moved, so I'm still kind of moving things over, so I haven't moved that picture yet, but it's on the wall. I don't remember which one it is. Um, I don't know what the title is, but it's something that you can kind of look at 1,000 times and see something different every time. It
Mm.
just pulls you into the world.
Yeah.
And I loved
Yeah.
what you did on this track here. You know, the sounds, of course, is great, but the visuals is really cool. And I'd love to hear a little bit about how you put that together and
Sure.
what's going on there, because it's also really cool. Because to explain, and I'll post this. The visuals, it's a time lapse, so you sort of see the painting create and unfold with the music, and it's really. I'm gonna let you say more.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. So, well, I hadn't done much drawing since I was a kid, but then I got an iPad this winter, and I've been like getting back into digital painting and drawing, and it's just like such a freeing thing after doing music a lot and uh, having something that is just a new form of art. I think always is helpful because you kind of like they feed off each other, like whatever
Yeah.
art form you're doing. Um, and so this painting I was doing uh, was based kind of on Salvador Dali, and I also love those kind of paintings where you can look at it and you see all these little interesting details everywhere.
Hmm.
So I just kind of started with a blank canvas and started drawing in one corner, and then my intention was to do some like a lot of different sections that seemed like kind of surreal. So it's kind of like this image of space, and there's these floating islands, and like this statuesque sort of angel figure that's also a lion or something, but it
You
has a
got
head
hooves and
that's like
paws.
aliens in it. So I just was going for something that was very different than anything else I'd ever done. Um, and there's like these giant balloons floating towards the sun, which is why I call it Helium Requiem.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
and so after thinking about that, um, my music at the time, I also was like, well, I want to try doing stuff that I've never done before in Ableton. And like, I sat down one night and just like uh, spent. I think I started at midnight and ended at 6 a.m. Uh, but I was just like doing everything I could to avoid my regular paths. So like I would pick instruments that I thought I would never use before. I normally would like create drum tracks from scratch, but for timing, I was like, well, I'll just use these clips that exist already, and who cares? I'll throw them in,
Hmm.
make something out of it. Um, and yeah, it was a. I ended up over the last month coming up with about uh, probably a dozen different tracks, and then I cut those down to the best, and now I'm gonna release this thing. I'm gonna have my cousin sing on it, and yeah,
Yeah, that's great. So you took this one night, pulled an all-nighter, trying some new things, and it's produced basically an album's worth of music for you.
yeah. Well, I didn't make all of them in one night, but yeah,
Right.
it was a good starting point.
It
Yeah,
got you started in that direction, which is awesome.
yeah,
Because it can be tough to break out of the normal habits and routines that work for you. Sometimes it
yeah,
takes an all-nighter, where your mind is operating a little bit differently,
and yeah,
isolated.
and a funny side story with this is that I was like, oh, I want to change the lighting in my room to set the mood, and so I turned my like lamp upside down and put a red frisbee on it because I was like, oh, I can make the room look kind of
Yeah.
red. And then by the end of the night, I looked back at it and it was like it had melted through the frisbee because of
Oh
the
wow.
heat from the lamp. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, bummer. there goes my frisbee, but
Yeah,
it was
good
worth
thing
it.
you didn't fall asleep with that and
Yeah.
woke up to some other surprise.
Yeah.
I find that helps a lot. And again, I'm in this like new space, and I recently just hung some Christmas lights. And I always have Christmas lights when I set up my space. It takes me back somewhere, good memories. The mood is
Yeah.
soft and warm. And, right away, once I put those on, I was like, there's just this relaxation that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so much of, making art in general is like just having that like kind of space to be comfortable makes a big
Yeah.
difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like for this album, I was like, normally I work at my desk, but I was like, oh, I'll just sit on my bed and, you know,
Yeah.
make music that way. And just that small change of space, I'm still in my bedroom, but either way, but s- sitting in a different way, and yeah, it helps.
Yeah, sometimes the desk feels a little bit like business and work. And
Mm-hmm.
you're doing projects, whereas like you said, the bed or even the floor sometimes that's like
Yeah.
playtime.
And
Changes it up.
changing the Ableton skin color
Yeah.
is nice.
Getting a little adventurous. Hmm.
Yep.
So when do you think you're gonna have this stuff ready to go? These new tracks?
Uh, I'm hoping in the next couple weeks, uh, if not the next month. Um, yeah, my cousin's coming over to record on Saturday,
Nice.
and I think that'll be interesting because he didn't really want to come up with the parts before we just work together and record, but he's just
Yeah.
coming up with lyrics, and then we're gonna see where they fit.
Okay,
Um,
nice.
yeah,
That's a fun way to do
it's
it.
yeah,
There's
and
sort of less pressure and also just it it's a true collaboration, I guess, where two separate ideas are coming together.
yeah, yeah. That's the hard part too. Sometimes is that like I don't want it to feel like the lyrics are just tacked on,
Yeah.
because they weren't written with the music in mind, or if he's just coming up with random lyrics like and placing them where they work. Uh, I think it'll work based on I know my cousin is an interesting lyricist and vocalist, but like doing that in another setting might feel a little tacked on.
Yeah. Yeah, I could
I
understand
don't
that
know.
for sure.
Have you ever tried that?
I wouldn't say quite like that. No. No, not really. Usually there's and most of my collaborations have really been like together. Um, you know, not like any kind of like, all right, I'm gonna do this and you do that. And we'll see what we get. It's more we're already together and we're gonna go for something. But maybe in like another kind of way, I have dug through notebooks and found like writing that I was like, oh, what? I'm gonna try to see if I can work this into this piece of music. And that's kind of an interesting. It's like a weird collaboration with yourself from another dimension. Like you're in this
Yeah.
other place writing, and then you've got music, and you kind of sort of randomly piece it together. I wouldn't say randomly, but you're selecting from, and it might not even be like a whole piece of writing, just a line here, a word there.
Yeah.
But that seems like a nice way to um, come up with some ideas and get some fresh, you know, eyes or ears or I guess words
Yeah. Yeah.
going.
The original idea, I don't know if we're going to stick with it, but um the first demo vocals he sent were like you couldn't understand the lyrics at all. And I asked him, "Well, what are the lyrics?" And he's like, "Well, I kind of intentionally pronounced everything weird so that no one could understand it."
Uh huh.
And he put a ton of reverb on it. And that got me thinking, well, what if we did an album that was just indecipherable and it was like as if it was an alien album or, you know, something from the future, a different language. Uh,
That would fit the
I
art.
guess like, what's that?
That would fit the art that you created,
It would,
that
yeah.
concept.
Yeah.
Because
But,
in looking at the painting, it's not, there's like elements of the real world, but nothing I'm really looking at is something you could find in the real world.
right.
And
Yeah,
that's
even the cows are kind of like on these stilt legs and, uh,
like you got like, I guess, like patches of green islands, but they're floating in space.
yeah.
So so I guess like in a way you're sort of taking like syllables and consonants and just kind of in much the way you're taking just bits and pieces of real life and then just abstracting it.
yeah.
A big way I tend to come up with my vocals is through kind of gibberish and just kind of singing and sing. Really, it's more searching for the sounds of the words, you know, where the consonants should be, where the long held vowels will go.
Mm,
And I find that to be like a really nice way because a lot of the times when I'm writing songs, I'm kind of like jamming on them in session view in Ableton Live. And this works really well for me because I don't have to commit to an arrangement right away.
sure.
It's also the downfall I've noticed too because then I don't commit to anything and you know it just never solidifies. But by just sort of like kind of playing around with the words and feeling where the sounds should go, and then that sort of limits your choices for words, and then you have to kind of fit the words in there and I find it's like it feels very natural. Almost like it's like the song just kind of unfolds rather than I'm like forcing it down into place. So
That's cool.
I could see like that concept you guys have being pretty cool, pretty effective way to work.
Yeah.
I'm
Well, that's
interested to
interesting
see.
too. Yeah. That's interesting to think about writing lyrics like over a loop too, because I suppose like you kind of after hearing the same thing over and over, you probably have to like it's like you're finding the most interesting melody maybe, or I don't know if that's how it works for you, but
Yeah, a lot of times. And sometimes just changing the melody a little bit makes the loop not feel so loopy. Um, you
hmm,
know, if you do like a phrase where you end on a higher note and then the next phrase you end on a lower note, suddenly like a 4 bar loop feels more like an 8 bar loop. You
yeah.
get a bit more mileage that way. You kind of learn like how you can stretch it out, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, I know you went to music school and I got an email from someone recently that was asking me about the merits of going to college for music. And I find this like kind of an interesting topic because I teach high school seniors
Mm,
and
mm-hmm.
it's really like it's kind of just drilled down their throats from an early age like you have to go to college, right? Like that's just what you do. It's
Mm-hmm.
just what you do. And you know, a lot of them would be better off not going. They're not students. They're maybe get into a different line of work, you know, get that experience first rather than just going, spending all this money, accruing all kinds of debt for something that you're not even sure you really want to do. And a lot of times the jobs aren't even there when you're done. And that's like a reality they're not always told about. It's just kind of like you go to college, you get your job, you make all your money. But, you know, as I'm imagine you've probably seen, that's not always the case.
Right. Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
curious. You know, I didn't go to music school or anything, but I did drop in on a lot of music courses in college, and I did take guitar lessons. And then I would say I went to the College of YouTube, for which I'm
Yeah.
still attending. But I was
Yeah,
curious, like, what your thoughts were on that and how it's helped you. Maybe if you think it's even there's been benefits or drawbacks, or what your thoughts were. Even
sure. Sure.
even the specifics of what you studied.
Yeah. Yeah, so I went to a liberal arts school here in Minnesota, St. John's and St. Ben's University. Um, and I studied music composition. Uh, I went into it not knowing what I was going to study really. Since I wasn't like the best performer, I was like, oh, maybe I could do music, but uh, wasn't sure. And I was either going to do English, art, or maybe music. And it was really the first year of oral skills and theory that like got me super interested in music. Um,
Hmm.
just because it's like felt like I was unlocking this world now of like I can listen to a song, figure out what the chords are, and you know translate that into
Yeah.
my own music. Um, and I know not all liberal arts schools like as undergrad have music composition as a focus, uh, and that was nice that I could you
Oh
know
yeah, sure.
focus on that. Even though a lot of it was self-directed, like we only had a couple composing classes. It was more like you learn the music theory, and then you know I I spent the last 2 years of college kind of working independently, learning how to record, um, and making a huge album project as my final senior thesis. Uh, and so, since it was like a liberal arts school, I was able to study psychology and computer science. I did a double minor as those two things.
Nice.
Um, and I think like it is a good question. Like, is it worth the debt and stuff? And I was lucky enough to get some scholarships and with help from my parents and like working on campus, I didn't end up having debt afterwards, which was
Yeah.
insanely huge
Oh yeah.
because, you know, my freelancing after college would have been a lot harder to do. And maybe I would have had to seek out like a full time job right away. Um, but yeah, well, I would say like aside from the knowledge, like the connections you make in college are pretty huge too.
Definitely. I think that's
Um,
a huge plus.
yeah, and that's what they say about a lot of grad programs too, like film programs, film scoring or whatever. Is that really you're there to kind of like collaborate with filmmakers and meet other artists and stuff. Um, and I mean, obviously, like it was super fun going to college for 4 years and just like being able to have that freedom to explore like your own creativity and just get inundated by all these interesting ideas. And so I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Um, and I would be curious like what people think about going to like a conservatory as
Hmm.
opposed to like liberal arts, where you're really focused on music. Um, Honestly, I feel like I would enjoy that a lot less, just because my personality, I like being a little bit of a Renaissance man and trying different stuff. So
Well, I'm sure those aspects really help the music. I mean, just if what we were just talking about with the Helium Requiem, where you've got the art of Dali kind of influencing this approach to making
yeah,
music. I'm sure that's got to be pretty valuable too, and that's, I guess, a product of liberal arts a little more,
yeah,
perhaps.
yeah. And the computer science side was good to just teach me a bit about like how to run a website and
Which you need
be
to do as a musician these days, right? Like you need to have
yes.
like that part of it. It's it's sometimes all that stuff is for me it's not the most exciting stuff. But it does matter definitely to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mm.
I guess I should also have a disclaimer that, people who major in music and music composition specifically, just know that it's going to take a while to start like making money after college. Um, so you might have to take side jobs, and like I've been doing video production stuff as for years, and that's kind of been my staple. But for the past couple years, I'm finally getting paid for composing, and it it only took like 8 years, but it's happening. So
Well, I tell you what, as a teacher, I see people that have their teaching degrees and they're substituting for 8 years looking for jobs that aren't there, you know.
yeah,
So I think in a lot of ways, it's like that in many fields. I
yeah,
always try to emphasize to the kids, like, more than anything, you have to really have like a burning hunger and a solid work ethic, no matter what it
yes,
is you're going to do. It's it is like kind of a fairy tale. I think that they're told that you're going to go to school, get your degree, and then pretty much settle into your life. And it's shocking to a lot of them when they you see them years later and they're like, oh, I got this degree, but now what? Um,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think
It's
that hunger, that drive to just work, do the work, is huge.
mm-hmm.
Maybe even the hugest part. I don't know, but um, I don't think you're gonna get. I definitely don't think you're gonna really get anything, and without that, regardless of what degree you have in what area.
Yeah, yeah. It's I think yeah, you'll feel if you have the creative bug, like you'll kind of feel like you have no other choice but to try and do it. Um, I think, and you know, you it's like the episode you had with the Hamlet story about to go pro or to not go pro. Um, yeah, it's a good question. Like you just have to figure out for yourself: is it worth it to try and go down this path, um, or get a cushy job of doing something else? But for me, yeah, it's definitely worth it, and I just love freelancing so much. Like I don't think I could go into a desk job in an office anymore.
Right.
So
Oh, that's cool. That's a great answer. It's it's a question on a lot of people's minds, I think. Well, there's a lot of people I talk to anyway. If this is like what the path they should take or not. Big commitment. It's not easy.
yeah,
I always remind my high school kids, though, like when they get stressed out about college and life choices like that, that these are kind of good problems to have. You know, there's probably a lot of people that'd be happy to change places with you, where
yep,
the world is, you're really just freaking out because over opportunity,
yeah,
and that's a little scary. There's all these choices and options, but, you know, at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's just all these different paths you can choose to take.
yeah. And it's not like you can't adjust your path if you need to. Uh, most of the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm I'm 30 and I'm still figuring stuff out. Like you know, at at one point last year, I was like, maybe I just want to quit music and just be a board game designer. So
Yeah, I heard you
that's
mention that actually
that's still a
in the
potential
show.
horizon thing, but
Yeah. What kind of games do you like to play and design?
uh, well, I've been doing like weekly game meetups with people and um, playing all sorts of strategy games and I don't know, party games, bidding games.
Uh,
I like any game that I don't know makes you think and has some fun interactions with people.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
yeah.
my wife has a gaming store with her brothers and a few
Oh,
other people,
cool.
and I've gotten to be around that kind of thing a lot, and just people getting together for like a game night. Whether they're playing like, I guess the first big one that you know I was exposed to was like Dungeons and Dragons, and then it was like Magic the Gathering, and then it's just kind of like almost any game that you can play. I've even
Yeah.
found myself involved in LARPing, live action role
Oh,
playing.
nice. Yeah.
And
Oh,
that
that's
was a lot
awesome.
of fun. I really enjoyed that a lot. It was a murder mystery, basically. Was it murder? Yeah, it was murder mystery. So like, we had to figure out what was going on, but it was just really cool to get in the character. And you know, these people like they go to the store regularly. Like that's where they hang out, and it's again, it's like a community. Like what we are talking about just with the music and like the train ride, the train jam.
Yeah.
But there is like a community. So I see, I guess, like a thread in your work, this communal aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of it's maybe like, I do spend so much time at home. I'm like ready to get out and meet people at night. And
Yeah.
I'm, I'm kind of like right on the border of introvert extrovert. So like part of me can go on this like 2 month podcast tour going around and meeting people for 2 months. And then, I'm also okay just sitting in my room doing music mixes for hours on end by myself. So I don't know.
Right. I
Yeah.
can relate to that. I do, enjoy getting out and talking, but I love just kind of staying in too. I
Yeah.
mean, I like to be out, but I like just space too,
Yeah.
which is nice.
Well, I'm excited to see where your podcast goes because
Oh,
I think
thanks. Me too.
you have the potential to make a really cool community with it. So
Yeah, it's really nice to see. There's a lot of great feedback, and I that's actually something I wanted to ask you too. Like, because like I've been doing, releasing Ableton Live packs, doing tutorials, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm finding, I think the podcast is getting the most reaction, like the most emails, the most comments, Twitter. Um, I'm trying to figure out why that is. Did you find that?
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are reaching out to you about your work with Composer Quest. Did you have any theories on, or did you maybe not even see what
Yeah.
I'm seeing, or?
No, I definitely see that. And uh it's like I just as a avid podcast listener for years, it is such a personal thing, just like having someone in your ear for days and days,
Yeah.
you know. And like one guy reached out and he's like, "Hey, I've been listening to all of your episodes twice."
Huh.
I was like, "Whoa." And it's always kind of funny when you meet someone who's been listening for a while cuz you don't know anything about them, but yet you know that they know so much about you. And
Right.
you know, I've had that experience too on the other end where it's like I meet someone who I've been listening to their podcast and it's like, yeah, it's such a cool experience. So, yeah, I think that makes sense versus a blog post where it's still pretty impersonal in a way.
Yeah, like maybe it's like just talking that you almost feel like you have to respond when you hear someone's voice, but writing is just kind of there. It's
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think
And I suppose
yeah, sorry.
oh, yeah, I suppose since like the beginning of your podcast is like your monologue episodes kind of, like people are probably thinking like, "Oh man, this guy's a cool guy," and I also would have some stuff to say about that. So, as they're listening, I'm sure they're like,
There have been some like
yeah,
nice suggestions that have come in, just people throwing out their 2 cents on how they like overcome a little block or something, that have
awesome.
been like, wow, that's really cool. And just like that question I asked you about going to school for music was, I didn't really know what to say because I didn't. I took a handful of courses in college, but my homework wasn't to create a song and
Yeah,
you know to make it like that. It was totally different, but just
yeah,
some nice perspectives. I think maybe that, whereas music, as we were saying before, can kind of be just that like thing going on in the background that you don't have to really pay attention to enjoy. I don't think you can do that listening to a podcast or just someone
yeah,
rambling on and you're not paying attention. Like, it's not really like an enjoyable thing.
right. Well, so, I don't know. Sometimes, like when I'm listening to your show, I end up going off on a tangent in my head of like, oh, where would, I start thinking about my own productions, and then you have such a soothing voice. It's kind of okay to be in the background for a bit, and then I come back to it, and it's like kind of meditative.
That's why those
So,
kids keep falling asleep in my class. Yeah,
I
it's
guess so.
it's a
Yeah,
weird, strange new medium.
yeah, yeah. I feel like this going on the tour and like putting those super long episodes together was really fun because I think like the art of podcasting is still like yet to be explored,
Yeah.
and so I try to mix it up and do like strange things. And I
You,
don't know if you got to this part in the, I think it's the second to last episode, where my friend and I did this like songwriting game where we each wrote a song in 30 minutes in separate rooms, and then we came back together and showed each other our songs. And then for the podcast episode, we recorded in both rooms, and then I panned our recordings right and left so you could hear us like coming up with songs simultaneously. And you kind of get this like weird interplay back and forth. Um, so
yeah, you
yeah,
were
that was
talking
a,
about that in the last one. I haven't heard it though.
oh yeah,
Yeah, that's a fun idea.
it's kind of trippy.
That is cool. Yeah, it there is an art, and I think what you've done, that tour, was just that's a great idea, and I really like how you're kind of incorporating like sort of the everyday parts of it into the show, where you're getting a ride home from the airport and that's the conversation you use. I thought that was pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
And you do a nice job with working in the audio and all the clips from people's songs. I always appreciated that. That was pretty cool. It was like
huh.
maybe like a taste of like Radio Lab almost, where like,
Yeah,
that's like kind of
yeah, for
like
sure.
out of control, like really in-depth editing and lots of cool stuff
Yeah.
happening. But you had
Oh
like
man, yeah.
that, just like a nice slice of that in there, which I thought was nice.
hmm Yeah, I felt more like an actual radio producer, like NPR. They would mix in like, the background ambience into the transitions and that kind of thing, which is super fun for me.
Yeah. Stuff I have not tapped into at all.
Yeah.
But soon, I'm
Huh.
more concerned about just actually doing it right now, you know.
Yeah.
And only only one or two people said, "Yo, you got a music production podcast, no theme song? What's going on, man?" I'm like, "I know."
Yeah. Yeah. You as long as you have the heart of the conversation and stuff,
Yeah,
it
you had a
works.
beautiful idea with having the guests create it.
Yeah. Farmed it out to my
Yeah,
guests to make the intro songs.
that's your job, buddy.
But yeah.
So I want to be, respectful of your time and everything, but I'd like to, give you a chance if you want to like direct anyone to where they can check out some of your latest work, or if there's something in particular you'd like them to see, or you name it.
Sure. Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. If you just look up, um, you can find it on my website too, actually. If you just go to charliemccarron.com,
Yeah.
and that's Charlie with an IE, McCarron. And uh, so the other thing that composers out there could get involved in, we're going to be posting this soon. We've been doing this thing called Film Score Fest here in Minnesota, and it's combining filmmakers and composers to make short films, and then the films are premiered with an orchestra playing the scores.
Oh wow.
So composers will be able to sign up uh, uh, on April 9th. We're going to have that up at minkino.com, MNKINO. And you can sign up, and like as long as you know how to make some sheet music for orchestra members, um, we'll try and pair you up with a filmmaker. And yeah, it's a really fun event.
That is really cool. So live screening, live music kind of deal.
Yeah.
I like that. That's
So
cool. And that's probably a if we go back to what we said earlier, I believe that's how they did the music in the old days in the old films, right? They have like a
yeah.
couple people
Yep.
playing, almost like a pit orchestra. Maybe it's not quite that elaborate, but
Yep. Yeah. We have a. I was just at this theater we have in Minnesota that has an organ up front. It's
uh,
like built in to this theater. So that would have been really cool to see back in the day.
yeah, yeah, for real. Just a totally different experience.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool. So I'll be sure to put that up when the episode goes live.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right,
Well.
Charlie. I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk, and I've always admired your work. So it's fun to hear you. It's kind of a
Yeah.
funny
It's
experience
well.
hearing your voice talking to me after all this time listening to you.
Yeah. I'm glad we got to chat. And sadly, I never had you on Composer Quest, but now I regret it. Um, but yeah, it's nice to chat. And
Yeah,
um,
definitely. Yeah, we'll be in
yeah.
touch. All right.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right.
Cool.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Charlie. Take care.
Yep. Bye.